Hello, it's Phillip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. This morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from 11 International Publishing. We've reviewed a number of their books in the past. They are of a high quality internationally. Many of them are translated from a native language into English, and I'm very thankful to the publishers for producing these books. This particular book is on a difficult subject. It's an area I've been involved in myself as an elected member of a local authority, and it's something that we do need to always have as a very important issue of conscience. The book's title is Protection of the Roma Minority under International and European Law. There are a lot of reasons for this, and they are based in many cases historically. The book has been written by Dr. Aniko Szalai. I hope I've pronounced her name correctly. My apologies to you if I haven't. As I say, it's come from 11 International Publishing Limited in The Hague. Elizabeth and I looked at the book and we had quite a long chat about what to say about this book. And we gave our review the title, Legal Protections for Europe's Largest Minority Examined in Substantial Depth. And that's what you've got. Now I'll talk about the review in a minute. Let's look at the book first. There's a hardback, white cover there. There's the front, you see. There is the spine, and then there's some detail on the back, which explains a little bit about what this is about. It also explains about Dr. Szalai as well. Now the back of the book has a useful little index right at the back. It runs to just over 200 pages. Before the index you have a bibliography, which is very detailed, has a lot of information, very useful, including cases and so forth. Runs to quite a few pages, as you can see there. Then you get to the, that's the actual start of the bibliography there. Then after that you do have some footnoting, which is useful. It's not too much, hasn't gone over the top with the footnoting at all, but you do have quite a lot of points. You also have the paragraph numbering at the sides, which is quite helpful. Now in the index at the back, if you want to find things, it's done actually on the page numbering, not on the paragraph numbering. Now at the front, there's the front page there, and then after that you've got a table of contents. There is available, this is available as an e-book as well as an ordinary book, and the table of contents set out in the paragraph numbers what you've got. You start off with some abbreviations too, which is quite helpful. Not a lot of chapters, 4 in total, but it's looking very much at the position. The preface is well worth looking at because of what happened in the 20th century and problems specifically looking at Hungary. There's the abbreviations, which I think again are very helpful because it can be difficult to understand them. Then we kick off straight away to chapter 1, Minorities, Indigenous, Roma, Introductory Remarks and Definitions, Vulnerable Groups and Integration. And it starts off, the legal status of indigenous peoples and Roma is now a respectable and frequent topic in mainstream legal discussion and research, even though this was not the case a few years ago. And it goes on from there, and as I say, you've got the footnoting and everything else. It's an excellent book. There are some useful tables and figures in it, dealing with some of the action plans and the various other things that have happened. There's a lot of detail here. And it's an important book for a lot of reasons. Let me explain those because I think they're very important, and I welcome this book as a contribution to what's happening at the moment with this particular problem, which is a major issue that we have to think about, notwithstanding all the other points that we have about populations moving about and so forth, including migration. This treatise on legal protections for the Roma minority in Europe, written by an Hungarian academic, has a special resonance at the moment in view of the relatively sudden phenomenon of mass migration into Europe of hundreds of thousands of refugees, mainly from Syria. I'm recording this in the summer, late summer now, of 2015, and so sudden is it that most European countries are facing this migration problem that they've been largely unprepared. Now this book, I think, is trying to give some indication of the way in which we must look at the sort of protections that are actually needed in the West. Because this is, to a certain extent, because of what we're facing with the migration issue, in the late summer of 2015. If you compare that with the Roma issue, you've got an interesting series of problems which clearly are evolving even as I record this short appreciation. Whether or not immigrant groups, whether large or small, quite fit the definition of cultural minorities all that neatly, this book, which is a recent publication from 11 International Publishing, will certainly provide useful and relevant information and guidance for policymakers at all levels of government, as well as human rights lawyers grappling with the emerging social, economic and legal issues engendered by Europe's current migration crisis. And with respect to the Roma, or what we actually also know as gypsy minorities, and that is a word which a number of people will identify with the word Roma. It's important to remember that, because as well as other indigenous people in other parts of the world, this book makes both clear and powerful statements and assembles equally powerful arguments regarding the necessity of protecting them and outlining the means by which such protection might be achieved. And that, I think, is the nub of the beauty of this book and what it's trying to do in 2015 onwards. Generally, minority rights are regarded as human rights, says the excellent and experienced author Dr. Aniko Szalai. And she then says, and thus the prime duty bearer of minority rights is the state in which the minority lives, which is generally dominated by the majority. That is, of course, the same across the whole of the European continent. This does not mean, she adds, that international law and international organisations have nothing to say about the topic. And that, of course, is where the developing argument is. We are reminded here, of course, that protection of minorities worldwide is related to the work and legislation of the United Nations itself, a point amply substantiated through this thesis and what we're seeing in Europe with the migration problems in 2015 in the late summer, early autumn. To cite only one example then, note the aim of the Millennium Declaration of implementing, quote, the principles and practices of democracy and respect for human rights, including minority rights. And that's really where we are coming from with the continuing debate. It's also worth pointing out, to cite another example, that the 2005 World Summit outcome reaffirmed the importance of minority rights protection, which stated in part that the rights of persons belonging to national or ethnic, religious or linguistic minorities contribute to political and social stability and peace and enrich the cultural diversity and heritage of society. And that actually is the main plank at the moment, not just for the Roma, but for all the other displaced people that we are going to be facing in the second half of the second decade of the 21st century. That's 2015 to 2020. These, of course, are laudable expressions that I've just referred to of the ideal, which unfortunately remains difficult to put into practice or to consistently reinforce. Szalai tackles this problem quite robustly in our view and in some considerable detail, covering case law and suggesting ways and means, including procedural aspects, by which such difficulties might be addressed. So, from human rights lawyers and academics to politicians, journalists and other researchers, anyone interested in the many issues surrounding the rights of minorities, as well as migrants, obviously it starts off and talks specifically about the Roma, will be interested in acquiring a copy of what is a very important book at this time. And the publication date is 2015. As I say, I'm recording this in the late summer of 2015. There's the book again, the side and then the back. And you can see, just opening it in the middle, European level protection of minorities and Roma. And it's funny that I'm recording this dealing specifically there with the Council of Europe. I'm recording this book came just at the time that the tremendous problems are just beginning to develop in Europe over people leaving Syria. So it's an important area. Chapter 4 says, which forum should you choose for your Roma-related discrimination case? So what Dr. Szalai has done is produced, I think, some very interesting points which are highly topical at the present time. I'd like to thank her very much indeed for what has been said here. I appreciate that Hungary itself is having a major problem. We've heard some of the comments that have been made in Britain, the United Kingdom, so we are well aware of the difficulties. But thank you to all concerned and to 11 Publishing for producing what is an important book at this time for us. Thank you. Bye-bye.